Voyager Chronicles, Book 1. A story hosted by Hogfell, with my permission. Forward. To my loving wife, growing my story with you has been the greatest joy of my life. An additional thank you to those new and old who have found their way onto this journey. The best has yet to come. Stay tuned, alive or departed.
CH1. Space. The vast, unending expanse that stretches in all directions. To see it for the first time from the view of a starship, rather than simply looking upward from the surface of a planet, is truly eye-opening. It takes time for someone to come to terms with the scope of their existence expanding beyond a single world. But time is a scarce resource. Captain, we are detecting an energy signature on our long-range scanners. The captain reeled herself back in from her mental wandering as one of the bridge staff relayed the alert to her. Is it a match? Her eyes swiftly darted across to the blurry monitor. The vague outline of a ship began to take shape as the readings continued to come in. Preliminary scans indicate the craft is a cruiser, most likely an infiltrator class. The bridge staffer paused. Energy levels and hull markings suggest the ship is of Ralerin origin. Jackpot, she thought to herself. Send a message over an open channel. Captain, shouldn't we contact Sector Command and... That ship will escape before any reinforcements can get here. We must act now, or risk letting them slip through our fingers again. This game of cat and mouse has gone on for long enough. It's time to end it. Channel is opened on you, Captain. The captain took a deep breath and cleared her head. Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Lorraine Laroach of the Aster. You are operating illegally under Article 7 of the Galactic Assembly Resolution on... Captain! The unidentified vessel is charging weapons and has launched fighters. So much for the civil approach.
How many?
Scanners indicate 4 fighters, Enforcer class. These are definitely Ralerins.
Ready?
All weapon systems and raise forward shields. I don't want a repeat of last time. Lorraine could still see the vivid memories from their previous attempt at capturing the ship. This time would be different. The command consoles aboard the Aster's bridge sprang to life. The weapons systems showed the readouts from the batteries as their rounds were locked, loaded, and aimed towards the enemy vessel. The ship's front end was soon covered in the dim light blue hexagonal field of the ship's shields. Captain, enemy fighters coming across the starboard side. The 4 fighters zipped towards the ship and let loose a torrent of laser fire before gliding above the ship. Fighters in range of port side batteries. Fire at will. The batteries set loose their barrage of laser fire, forcing the Ralerin fighters to take evasive maneuvers. One of the laser bolts managed to hit a fighter near its fuselage, as a thin trail of fire formed before the fighter exploded. The remaining fighters attempted another run at the ship, blazing towards it from the port side. The Aster was better prepared this time, and fired 3 quick bursts from its port side batteries. The faster bursts of laser bolts surprised the fighters, making 2 pull up from the run. The 3rd fighter was too slow to react and took a bolt to its wing before exploding. Fighters have disengaged us, Captain. 1 step closer to victory. Good. Now to deal with the cruiser. Ready ion charges and aim for the ship's engines. The weapons officers inputted the new targeting parameters into their consoles, and the batteries adjusted their facing. Before the salvo was ready, the Ralerin cruiser fired off a fierce barrage of laser fire at the Aster. The blast of laser fire thundered against the ship's shields before dissipating. Shields at 75% and holding steady, Captain. Good. What's the status of the ion charges? Ion charges ready for firing. Fire! The salvo of ion charges bolted out from the batteries and towards the Ralerin cruiser. Lorraine and the bridge staff watched as they drew closer to their mark. The Ralerin cruiser attempted to escape harm's way with a sudden burst from its engines. The cruiser dodged the starboard side ion charges, but the port side salvo hit the ship. The blue, crackling masses spread across the ship's rear as the engines flickered on and off.
Enemy cruiser's engines have been disabled, Captain.
Now let's finish this. Ready another salvo of ion charges and target their...
Captain, another squadron of enemy fighters is approaching from our rear.
The crew watched the tactical readout as they saw the 4 new blimps appear on the map, racing towards the rear of their ship. Captain, should we resend the order to prep ion charges and raise our rear shields instead? Lorraine tightly gripped the armrest of her seat. This ship had been eluding them for what felt like ages now. If she let it slip away again when they were so close to capturing it, there was no telling when it would appear again or how much havoc it might wreak before then. If she didn't raise her shields, however, the Aster and her crew could suffer serious damage. Lorraine could feel warm beads of sweat start to slide down her face as her heart pounded. Raise rear shields, Lorraine replied. She could feel a sinking feeling in her stomach as she watched the tactical readout. The building energy in the batteries disappeared, and instead, the same pale blue hexagonal pattern appeared around the rear of the ship, now fully covering it. The bridge crew watched as the fighters soared across the ship's length, strafing it with their laser barrage as the blast crackled against the shields. Captain, we're detecting a new energy signature, some sort of fighter craft. I haven't seen anything like it before. Lorraine brought her gaze to the new blimp on the readout. Scans are still coming in, but so far this seems to be an unknown model of fighter. Just her luck, Lorraine was this close to capturing the elusive Ralerin cruiser they had been hunting for weeks when a new squadron and a new type of fighter came to its rescue. Her fingernails dug against the palm of her hand in frustration. Ready burst salvos and decrease rear shields. The batteries prepared for their new targeting and brought their barrels to bear towards the new fighter. They let loose their quick burst of laser fire at the approaching fighter. The fighter suddenly launched forward as it pushed its engines to full throttle. It managed to dash through the incoming barrage of laser fire before priming its weapons. Captain, we're detecting 3 missile clusters on the enemy craft, and they're locked onto the bridge. Lorraine's eyes widened in horror. She knew the shields could withstand a few salvos from the ship and strafing runs from the fighters, but a missile barrage might be too much for them currently. Full power to forward shields and brace for impact. Lorraine and the bridge crew secured themselves to their positions as the fighter let loose its trio of missiles. The 3 missiles raced towards the ship's bridge before each separating into 3 smaller missiles. The new trios shared the same heading as they slammed into the shields around the bridge. The bridge of the Aster violently shook from the impact of the missiles as the crew endured the aftermath. Just as things were starting to settle down, the bridge was filled with the sound of wailing sirens and their dark red glow. Warning! Warning! Bridge life support systems have been compromised. All bridge crew are advised to secure their emergency life support mask immediately. The ship's automated warning system looped the message over as the bridge crew started to grab their life support mask and secure them to their faces. Lorraine put on her mask and secured it around her face. The normal ping that the mask emitted once it was secured around a user's face didn't go off this time as Lorraine started to gasp for air. She released her safety harness from the captain's chair and tried to escape the bridge. The walkway from the front of the bridge to the entrance doors felt as if it was only getting longer with every step. Each step took more effort and threatened to bring Lorraine to the ground under the new strain. The last thing Lorraine recalled before becoming overcome by unconsciousness was the Aster turning away from the crippled Ralerin cruiser and feeling the sudden jolt from the warp engines as the ship escaped. She may not have captured the Ralerin cruiser this time, but she and her crew lived to fight another day to continue the hunt. That was victory enough for her. The Galactic Tribune. We have recently passed the 5-year anniversary of what most have dubbed the Blackout. For those who need a refresher, a cyber attack crippled the very heart of the Ralerin Empire, causing mass mayhem to ensue. In the wake of the attack, Ralerin officials traced the source of the attack to Brigantia, a moderate world in the southeastern quadrant of the galaxy. After receiving a majority approval vote in the Galactic Assembly's Military Council, an expeditionary force was allowed to pass into the quadrant and attempt to apprehend those responsible. Sources still dispute the exact occurrences on Brigantia, but here is what we know. The Ralerin Expeditionary Force failed in capturing the culprit of the attack. The Ralerin forces on Brigantia and the surrounding worlds were forcibly removed by an ad hoc coalition. Many of the forces that repelled the Ralerins formally banded together under a long-forgotten charter of the Galactic Assembly. Tune in later for the continuation of this story. CH2. Lorraine looked around the small white and gray room. It was supposedly a bedroom in the medical bay of the Starbase for Sector Command. However, it still felt like a spare machine room aboard an old space refinery, with wire ports in the wall and the occasional oil stain. She looked out the viewing port from her bed and could see the nearby anchorage modules where the Aster was currently dry docked. From what she read in the mission report, the Aster had sustained damage to its bridge life support systems and minor damage to the hull, batteries, and shield array. Lorraine crawled out of bed and made her way over to the viewing port. She held her hand against the glass and slowly gazed over the blast marks that littered the hull of her ship. The Aster might not be the fastest or the most powerful ship in the sector, but it was her ship, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Lorraine made her way back over to the bed and sat across the side of it. She brushed her foot against the small table next to the bed and brought her mind back to what she had been trying not to dwell on, the report. Lorraine had read over the report from her recent mission at least a dozen times. Each time she read it, some new possibilities or what-ifs popped into her mind about how she could have done things differently. Maybe if she hadn't been so focused on what was going on in front of them, she would have predicted the arrival of the second squadron. Perhaps, if she had reported the sighting like she was supposed to, the ship would have been forced to surrender or otherwise been overwhelmed by multiple foes. Lorraine dragged her fingers through her hair and took a deep breath. She exhaled and looked over at the table next to her, where the action report sat. The small tan folder held yet another critique of her performance in the field. Reaching over, she grabbed the report and started to thumb through it again, waiting to see what new thoughts might emerge. Frigate Aster, under the command of Captain Laroach, sighted target vessel Serpent. Captain Laroach deviated from protocol and engaged the ship before reporting to command, much to her and her crew's peril. Lorraine could feel the condescending comment sting at her confidence. It hurt reading it the first time, and it still hurt this time. It was easy to judge another person's mistakes when you're half a system away from the fighting, not to mention after the fact. She searched further in the document. Frigate Aster managed to destroy 2 Ralerin fighters and temporarily crippled Serpent before being flanked by Ralerin reinforcements. Ralerin reinforcements proceeded to cripple critical life support systems of Frigate Aster and force a retreat. managed, temporarily, forced. She could still feel the doubt in the written words of the document. It was no secret to Lorraine that not all of her superiors shared her eagerness to act in the moment. She did her best to think things through, but ultimately, she knew that she couldn't afford to dot every I or cross every T, not with the current state of things. A knock came at the door, dragging Lorraine's head out of the report and back to the moment at hand. Yes? My apologies for interrupting, Captain. Admiral Gosselin requests your presence. Of course, Lorraine had been too busy sulking and thinking over what-ifs to recall the real thing that she had been dreading. Another chewing out. Have a seat, Captain Laroach. I'm eager to review your performance from your last engagement. Admiral Gosselin gestured to the empty seat at the far side of the table.
Thank you, Admiral Gosselin.
Lorraine made her way across the room and took her seat.
I'm eager to review your performance.
He didn't have to rub in how eager he was to be chewing her out. She sighed internally and interlocked her fingers together as she watched Admiral Gosselin sort through his copy of the report.
I understand that you managed to engage Serpent, but were unable to capture the vessel. Yes, sir. I also understand that you decided not to contact command upon sighting the ship, rushed to engage it, and most concerning of all, you strayed wildly outside of your patrol vector to even pursue the ship.
Admiral Gulson's cold gray eyes focused on Lorraine, noting the slightest movement from her seat.
Strayed from my patrol vector?
Admiral, you must be mistaken. I checked the navigational readouts from your ship, Captain. You went well beyond the last curve in your patrol vector to pursue. Admiral Gulson rubbed his fingers against the temples of his head and exhaled deeply. Lorraine suddenly realized what her crew had been trying to tell her before they moved to investigate the ship. She had thought that the only concern at the time was going in alone. She didn't even think to check on their current heading once the cruiser was sighted.
Sir, I couldn't stand the thought of letting that ship get away. Not again. You know what havoc just one Ralerin ship can cause if left unopposed. I know. It isn't easy for me to stand the thought of letting a Ralerin ship operate unopposed in neutral space. We both know all too well the chaos that entire Ralerin fleets can bring to bear in a system.
Admiral Gulson rose from his seat and walked over to the viewport overlooking the orbital starbase.
Even if you had called in the sighting of Serpent, I wouldn't have had any substantial reinforcements to send to assist you. Our forces in this sector are stretched thin enough as it is. After the battle at Petov, Command is still trying to regain the ships we lost. Admiral Gulson folded his arms behind his back
and tightly gripped his hands together.
Do you think we'll ever be able to defeat them?
Lorraine rose from her seat and stood next to Admiral Gulson at the viewport. Today? Number tomorrow? Number, but someday we'll defeat them. Admiral Gosselin paused. In the meantime, however, I have new orders for you. Lorraine's ears perked up, and she turned her gaze to the side. Already? Are you sure I'm the only one who acts too quickly around here? Lorraine casually remarked, before making her way back over to the table.
Sometimes swiftness is necessary to a successful mission. If it makes you feel any better, I've never doubted your ability to act quickly, but simply your knowledge of when not to.
Admiral Gulson reached across the table and handed Lorraine a new folder.
Command recently received intelligence that someone on Florian might have a lead on the whereabouts of Serpent and other possible Ralerin activity in the area.
Lorraine skimmed through the folder. She had never been to Florian, but from what she had heard, the planet was within the League of Nisoa and was said to hold many ruins. A perfect place for the historians to go.
As we both know, the Aster is still dry-docked and won't be ready for service anytime soon. I want you to take one of the shuttles from your ship to Florian with a detachment of soldiers and archivists. Your primary objective will be the securing of any actionable intel on Serpent. However, your secondary standing objective is to assist the archivist team with identifying any potential sites of interest for future archiving and examination. Lorraine had never quite figured out exactly how the historians could fight a war and pursue intellectual expeditions simultaneously. One seemed hard enough without the other. Understood. When am I shipping out? Tomorrow. I imagine you still need some time to finish recovering. If you have no further questions, Captain, you're dismissed. Thank you, Admiral. Lorraine closed the new folder and made her way out of the room. She had no complaints about being back out in the field so soon. If there was one thing she couldn't stand, it was idle stillness. Lorraine had only briefly looked through the mission brief with her new orders, but her mind was already abuzz with all the potential prospects she might find in the field. If this lead panned out, then they might be able to set their own trap for the elusive Ralerin cruiser. But first, there was another matter Lorraine needed to tend to. She looked down as she felt her stomach grumbling. A quick stop at the station's mess hall was in order. Lorraine could only deal with so many things at once, and right now, stopping the revolt of her stomach was much more pressing. The Galactic Tribune. We now resume our previously started coverage from where we left off. This charter, known as the Historian Alliance, was initially established to aid in the preservation and discovery of archaeological remains from the Star Voyager era. We may truly never know just how many civilizations were subjugated or destroyed by their tyrannical reign. Many have disputed the validity of using the charter to fund an armed resistance against the Ralerin Empire, essentially. Advocates in favor of the Historian Alliance heavily rely on the archaeological work they continue to do and the work they undertake to help downtrodden and war-torn areas. There are still many unanswered questions and accusations surrounding the Brigantia debacle and the conflicts that have emerged from it. Is the Historian Alliance a legitimate entity on the galactic stage, or little more than well-organized insurgents? Were foreign mercenaries utilized by either side, as some reports have indicated? Will the Galactic Assembly renew the agreement allocating several key shipping lanes for Ralerin military use? And most pressing of all, who is the mysterious leader of the Historian Alliance? Chapter 3. Marines at attention. Captain, entering the briefing room. Lorraine entered the cramped briefing room. She was thankful that her crew was able to muster so quickly, no doubt thanks to her second-in-command. Thank you, Lieutenant Kelson, everyone at ease, Lorraine said as she made her way to the front of the room and nodded to the projector operator when she was ready. All right, we have new orders. While the Aster is undergoing repairs, we are to take one of her shuttles and travel to the nearby world of Florian within Nisoan space. The Marines examined the display from the projector, which showed the highlighted orb that was Florian. The world was beyond their main defensive line, but thankfully didn't border any known areas of Ralerin occupation. Our mission is to secure intelligence from a local scavenger named Jacob Dunn. His last known whereabouts place him near the outskirts of the capital city of Oldus. We are unsure about the extent of this intel, but target Serpent was last reported near the system, Lorraine said, before nodding again. A click from the projector and the image display changed to show an old map of the capital city of Oldus. Currently, we are unaware of any Ralerin activity on the planet, but Command has not ruled out the possibility of Ralerin operatives on the surface. If all goes well, we'll find Jacob, secure the intel, and be back in a day. Unless there are any questions, I suggest you all... Ahem. Aren't you forgetting something, Captain Laroach?
An elderly voice from the back of the briefing room called out. Lorraine squinted a bit in the dark, but was quickly able to make out who the stiff silhouette was. Kaufman Tiller, head archivist aboard the Aster, another of her regular critics.
Right. As per usual historian protocol, we will be taking a small team of archivists with us. Our primary objective is still the intel, but we are to report any sites of interest for future examination.
She paused, looking back towards the elderly silhouette. Did I leave anything out, Archivist Tiller? Lorraine gently tapped the sole of her boot against the ground as she waited for his response.
That's Head Archivist Tiller. And no, I believe you got everything now. Carry on, Captain.
Head Archivist Tiller responded.
Any other questions?
Lorraine waited a moment to see if there were any takers.
Very well then. Dismissed everyone.
The projector turned off, and the Marines made their way out of the room. Lieutenant Kelson stayed behind for a moment.
Feeling all right after what happened on your last mission, Lorraine? Kelson asked. He felt bad about being on a different assignment at the time.
I'm okay. I wasn't unconscious for that long. I was cleared for service after all. Lorraine shrugged it off. She had faced more hazardous situations back home before she ever enlisted. Just make sure to watch yourself out there. We don't know what we'll be walking into, Kelson cautioned.
I'll keep on alert. You know we aren't landing in a contested area, right?
Lorraine asked as the pair made their way out of the briefing room.
I know, but the way things are going, it won't surprise me if the entire sector turns hot soon. You think it'll get to that point?
She watched as Kelson paused in his tracks.
I got a taste of the lengths the Ralerins are willing to go at Petov. It won't be different here.
The two silently exited the briefing room.
Captain, all systems are green. We are clear on final approach vector to enter Florian's atmosphere.
One of the shuttle's pilots radioed back to Lorraine. Counting the two pilots, the shuttle held herself, 16 Marines, and 4 archivists. 3 if Head Archivist Tiller was counted as a living artifact.
Lieutenant Kelson, if you would please brief the men on our landing plan, Lorraine said, as the seated Marines turned their focus towards Kelson. All right, once our shuttle sets past the outskirts of Oldus, we'll set up a perimeter and... Hate to interrupt, Lieutenant. Captain, we have incoming fighters from our front. They appear to be local. No energy readings from their weapon systems, though they are trying to hail us. Should I put them through?
The pilot radioed back to Lorraine. She knew Florian had a defense force, but it seemed odd for them to be investigating a ship as small as their shuttle traveling in a domestic lane. Talking to them appeared to be the quickest path towards finding out what was in store for them on the planet itself.
Put them through,
Lorraine replied, as she heard the comm click from an external source.
Unidentified vessel. This is Colonel Akos of the Florian Defense Force. You are entering space under the protection of the League of Nisoa. State your purpose.
A stern voice said over the comm channel. Colonel Akos, we are a historian archivist team exercising our rights to free exploration of cultural and historic sites under Article 17 of the Galactic Assembly Resolution on... Historians, eh? All right, we'll let you through. Kindly follow the route we are sending to your navigational computer to our station. After a brief inspection of your ship and a verification of your intended site, you'll be cleared to travel planetside. Do not deviate from this course, or we will be forced to take action. Colonel Akos closed out the comm channel. Lorraine thought for a moment. She had traveled to several worlds before on similar expeditions, and seldom had anyone been so curious about their plans. Most of the time, She had swiftly been shuffled past any station and instructed to send an archivist or two over to the municipality to settle other details. "Captain," Kelson said, "permission to speak freely."
Granted? I think this Colonel Akos has more than just a chip on her shoulder. Most likely.
"Did you anticipate running into a roadblock this soon?" "Figured it could happen, but I was hoping we'd get to land first. Being stuck at a station makes things more difficult." Lorraine shrugged. "Do you have a plan to get out of this?"
Presently, no, but I won't let that stop me. If there was one thing Lorraine knew how to do well, it was how to think on her feet. Now she just had to hope that they lived long enough after docking for her to get an idea. "Admiral, you're receiving a transmission on an encrypted channel."
Admiral Gosselin turned to the monitor. He carefully studied the incoming signature. His brow furrowed when he realized whose mark it was. He turned back to the aide.
"Patch them through,
"And then leave us." The aide approved the call and then quickly exited the room. Gosselin lowered the panels of his viewport, leaving the room encased in darkness. A dim glow appeared on his monitor as the transmission was connected.
"Were you able to get it done?" A garbled voice beckoned from the monitor. "I was. However, I am a bit confused." "Why her?" Gosselin asked.
"Why not her? I've studied her file. She has potential." "I'm inclined to agree."
What of the court-martial, though? Let's just say it's in limbo for now.
Her current mission will confirm if she's worth our time. I'm deferring to you in this. You did provide the intel after all.
We'll know soon enough, Admiral.
For now, I have other matters to tend to. I'll be in touch." The voice faded, and the monitor went dim. Admiral Gosselin sat silently in the darkness. For her sake, he hoped Lorraine could produce the results she was so eager to secure. Otherwise, no amount of shadowy intervention could save her career. The Ralerin broadcast conglomeration. In recent news, Emperor Ralerius has decreed that an expansion will be added to the memorial, honoring those who fought to stop the nefarious terrorist attack 5 years ago. Members of the royal court have pledged to increase the compensation to those affected by the attack. On the industrial front, factories report an increase in military production. The newly programmed soldiers will undoubtedly bolster the front lines and ensure the security of Ralerin citizens, both at home and abroad. All subjects of the Ralerin Empire are reminded to remain vigilant and report any suspicious individuals to the nearest authorities or RFI hotline. Only together may we prevent another catastrophe on the scale of 5 years ago. CH4. Thank you for being so cooperative in dealing with this security matter, Colonel Akos said as she scrolled through a small tablet. Her green eyes appeared to linger on every item of the checklist. Has anything changed since the first 2 times you looked through that list of yours? Lorraine replied, rolling her eyes impatiently. At this point, she would welcome an infraction or anything, just so this would move along in some direction. Being led around in circles was starting to grate on her. My apologies, Captain. Laroach, was it? You may think of this as trivial, but it is a pivotal element in maintaining order throughout Nisoan space. Her eyes stopped scrolling through the list and turned to Lorraine coldly. I wouldn't expect someone from a backwater world like Brigantia to understand. Colonel Akos scoffed before resuming her thorough examination of the list. Lorraine gritted her teeth and bit her tongue. This woman was trying her patience and her restraint. Fortunately, another member of the defense force came, giving Lorraine the time she needed to cool her anger. Colonel Akos, we've completed the scan you requested on the shuttle. And Did you find anything outside of regulation?
No, ma'am. The shuttle meets all required standards. It does appear to have a loose stabilizer near the fuel tank that should be serviced soon, but nothing is breaking current regulations. Thank you, Private.
Colonel Akos waved the soldier off as he returned to his prior duties. Well, it looks like your ship managed to check out. I am, however, a bit confused. For a simple detachment of historians, your cargo manifest shows you carrying an awful lot of weapons. Any comment on that?
What can I say? You never know what you'll find when you go searching through centuries-old ruins of long-dead civilizations. Pays to be able to defend yourself,
Lorraine said, tapping the tips of her fingers against the empty holster on the side of her belt. She knew well enough to leave her blaster on the ship. The last thing she needed was to give an excuse to detain her.
I suppose. Still, I feel concerned knowing that some renegade group of well-armed archaeologists is running around loose on Florian. No telling what trouble they might stir up,
Colonel Akos said, narrowing her gaze at Lorraine. We're historians, not archaeologists. You might look down on me and my team, but we are the real deal. You wouldn't believe half of the things I've seen in my time as a historian. Lorraine said, her cheeks puffing out a bit. She could feel her heart thumping and her blood starting to boil. Lorraine dug her nails into her palm before slowly exhaling. How long do you think it will be before I can depart from this station? Colonel Akos lightly tapped her fingers along the back of her tablet. Presently, the rest of your inspection should be done in an hour or so. After that, I'll fill out the necessary paperwork and send a report to Command Planetside. They will have to process the report and likely send their own questions or inspection requests back. Once I send them a confirmation, I can conduct any additional inspections and send those details back Planetside. Once everything is checked off, you'll be set, though you'll want to be careful when you do depart. Why's that? Lorraine slowly gritted her teeth. Well, this time of year, our planet is known for long and intense atmospheric storms. I would just hate to think I sent someone out to their death, Colonel Akos said, the corner of her lips slightly curling up. Do you have a problem with that?
No, Colonel.
Good. You may return to your ship for now if you wish, but do not attempt to leave this station or you will be fired upon. Lorraine turned and started back towards the shuttle. She had dealt with her share of arrogant and snobby bureaucrats before, but most of the time they merely wanted to flex their authority or try to squeeze out a bribe. Something didn't quite add up about Colonel Akos.
Judging by the sour look on your face, am I to assume that we are still stuck here and that Colonel Akos is just another difficult official?
Kaufman asked, as he peered his gaze up from an old tome. Yes, and yes, Lorraine replied as she went to grab a drink from inside her satchel. After gulping down a cool, refreshing drink of water, she sighed and turned to Kaufman. How do you do it?
Do what?
He asked, puzzled.
Be so difficult all the time? Now, listen here, Captain Laroach.
Lorraine, Kelson interjected as he wedged himself between the two sparing partners. What did you find out? I found out that we apparently have a stabilizer loose close to the main fuel tank in the shuttle and need to get it fixed soon. However, I also think Colonel Akos is intentionally trying to delay us, Lorraine said, before sitting down in one of the shuttle's seats.
What makes you think that?
Kelson asked, as he and Kaufman both moved closer and sat down nearby. Well, in the past, when we've gone on these sorts of missions, most bureaucrats or other authorities that we deal with try to rid themselves of us as quickly as they can. I've never seen anyone put up so much fuss over details as Colonel Akos. She looked to Kaufman. Well, aside from you, but No offense. After the runaround, patronizing and blatant superiority complex she'd seen from the Colonel, Kaufman wasn't that bad in comparison.
None taken. A rare compliment even if you didn't intend it.
Kaufman shrugged.
While you were dealing with that harpy, I had been looking through some old Nisoan tomes, and I think I know why she is trying to stall us.
Kaufman flipped through the pages of the aged tome that he had been reading. As the pages rapidly slid between his fingers, the musky smell of the tome's leather cover and aged paper assaulted the nostrils of Lorraine and Kelson, who both turned away until the desired page had been reached.
Ah, here we are.
Kaufman moved the book closer for the other two to see. Florian was once home to a research installation of the star Voyager Empire. From what I've been able to gather, the site remains relatively well preserved, though few have dared to go near it. Why's that? Lorraine asked, as she looked through the aged pages of the book. The drawing in the book was crude, but from what she could see, the base was comprised of a pentagonal shape with an elegant dome forming at its center, with thick beams converging from the 5 prongs.
Bad omen. It might seem trivial to us, but many of these ruins hold haunting memories for the locals of many worlds, and that stigma has been passed down from generations.
Kaufman scratched at his chin.
I also suppose the prospect of ancient security systems and still active security droids also detours potential prospectors from getting too close.
Is it possible that there is some secret knowledge or advanced technology there? Lorraine asked, looking up from the book.
In my opinion, I would be shocked if there wasn't.
Then that must be why Colonel Akos is stalling us. She doesn't want us getting to those ruins and finding whatever is inside. Lorraine slowly worked the pieces together in her mind.
Well, if that is true, then how are we going to get out of here? At this rate, we'll be stuck here for at least a week with her nitpicking every detail. If we try to leave, we get blasted to pieces,
Kelson said, as Lorraine thought about their current situation.
I think I have an idea to get out of here a lot quicker, though it will most likely involve breaking a few of the Colonel's regulations.
Colonel Akos sat at her desk, watching the camera feed from the landing platform. There had been no movement since Captain Laroach had returned to her shuttle. Maybe the naive young captain had learned better than to try to mouth off to her again. Her lips curled upward in a triumphant grin. Her eyes darted away from the monitor as she spotted a blinking light on her intercom. She straightened up in her seat before pressing the button. Yes? Colonel Akos, you have an incoming call on your private frequency. Should I put it through?
At once.
Colonel Akos replied, as the muscles in her face tightened slightly.
Colonel Akos.
A cold voice emerged from her intercom.
I trust you have been able to stall our uninvited guest? Yes, my lord. I have done as you instructed and delayed them. The coming storm should ensure that they will be stuck here far longer than I originally anticipated. Good. It is imperative that the historians do not reach the Star Voyager ruins on this world. I am sending a detachment to secure what is rightfully ours. Have you made any headway on your other assignment?
Yes, my lord. My sources have been keeping a close eye on the known hangouts of the target. A team is on standby for capture.
Very good, Colonel.
When we succeed, I shall not forget your contribution to our efforts. Thank you, my lord. Before Colonel Akos could finish, the line cut off. She breathed a deep sigh of relief as she sank back in her chair and returned her gaze to the monitor. Still no change from before. This was shaping up to be much easier than she had thought. Her eyes darted back to the intercom as she saw it light up again. Yes? Colonel Akos! We have a situation. We're detecting dangerous system readings from the historian's shuttle. Colonel Akos squinted at the display. She knew the simple shuttle didn't have any weapons emplacements. What were those historians up to now?
Patch me through to their ship.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Colonel Akos. We've detected hazardous readings from your shuttle. What is your malfunction?
This is Captain Laroach. Our shuttle's fuel storage is starting to overheat. I think the stabilizer was worse than we thought. If we don't move our ship, then the engine tank will overheat and could cause our shuttle to explode. Most likely taking this station with it. Colonel Akos narrowed her gaze as she pulled up the thermal readout on the terminal at her desk. Fuel storage temperatures were indeed rising and would soon reach a critical mass. The last thing she wanted was backwater spacers flying in some downbeaten ship, damaging her station. If their ship were truly about to explode, that would solve her problem. But if not, she groaned internally before replying.
Very well. You may proceed at your own risk.
Colonel Akos cut the line and slammed her fist against her desk. In all likelihood, the shuttle somehow found a way to forge its readings, and made her blink first in this proverbial game of chicken. She snarled bitterly and slapped the various reports off her desk. Colonel Akos halted her tirade as a gem of an idea sprang into her head. She switched her intercom on.
Yes, Colonel?
Run a scan and see if Captain Laroach's shuttle still had its station ID key logged before their impromptu departure. Yes, ma'am. There was a moment of silence as Colonel Akos could hear typing. Yes, the shuttle still had the station ID key logged into the system. Good. Kindly activate the tracking system embedded in the ID key. In the event of the shuttle exploding before they can get help, I would like to know where to report the crash to. Of course, ma'am. Is there anything else you need?
No, I think I have everything under control now.
Colonel Akos clicked off the line and recomposed herself. Captain Laroach may have gotten away for now, but this was far from over. The Free Historian Broadcast. Thank you for tuning in to our nightly broadcast from the front lines in the East to the core of the Southeast and to all of our listeners beyond. The proposal to widen the legitimate scope of operations the Historian Alliance can undertake is still deadlocked within the Galactic Assembly. Though officially hampered, efforts on the ground to help those affected by the fighting in much of the southeastern quadrant continue to progress well despite the deadlock. In other news, talks with the three major powers in the quadrant, Nisoa, Brumels, and Luxka, have shown promising signs. With the weight of the Ralerin's oppressive steel being pushed out of the quadrant, representatives are hopeful for future negotiations. With that, we will conclude our nightly broadcast and will return with more news and events as they develop. CH5. Status report.
We're not showing any readings from the station. We are in the clear and should be arriving at the outskirts of Oldus within the hour, Captain. Lorraine deeply exhaled as she could feel her nerves slowly winding down. Their ruse was a risky one, but it had appeared to pay off. Captain Laroach. Kaufman exhaled as his nostrils flared out. Was there any chance that this feint of yours might not have worked? Well, maybe a small chance, but I can't stress this enough that it was a very small chance. Lorraine brought her hand behind her head and scratched through her hair as she tried to refrain from laughing. She didn't want to tell him about the small trick they had pulled off to heat the casing of the stabilizer. It would only anger him more. Just a small chance. Just a small chance we could have been blown to bits by our own engine. Or worse, shot to pieces by Colonel Akos and her goons. Kaufman's aged face turned from its worn tan complexion to an intense boiling red as his tirade ensued. He continued to rave in his seat until he gradually started to lose steam. One of these days I'll get that transfer.
one of these days. Lorraine was uncertain if Kaufman was simply too tired to vocalize his annoyance, or if he was merely resigned to the fate that he was stuck with her.
Look on the bright side. We get to dive into ancient ruins of the most terrifying civilization in known history. Just think about what untapped treasures or long-forgotten secrets could be inside.
Kaufman's head slowly perked up, and he reached for the nearby tome he had previously been reading from. It didn't take much to reignite an archivist spirit, even one of Kaufman's advanced age.
I forgot to tell you earlier.
While you were working on your reckless plan to get us out of the station, Kaufman shot her a stern look before resuming. An archivist may be quick to forgive, but seldom do they forget. I had done some more digging through the Nisoan tomes I had brought. Kaufman flipped to a page he had flagged. The pages of the old tome flew between his fingers, and from their gust came the same dank odor from before, making Lorraine turn away for a moment to breathe in some uncontaminated air. She had seen it coming, but made the mistake of inhaling right when he started flipping. I was able to get a better idea about some of the research that went on at this site. According to various local accounts from the time, they reported seeing strange aircraft soaring through the night skies. Whether or not anything useful ever came of these experimental craft is unknown. Still, the data from their testing could potentially be very valuable. Lorraine examined the page, seeing the aged text, as well as a sketch of what appeared to be a streak zipping through the dark sky.
All the ruins and ancient civilizations we've explored, and I'm still baffled by the Star Voyagers. How could anyone conquer the whole galaxy, much less hold it for as long as they did?
Captain Laroach, I dedicated a great deal of my youth to studying the Star Voyagers. Kaufman's gaze dropped a bit as he slowly breathed out. Theirs was an empire built upon conquest and governed with the heavy hand of fear. Many questions remain about their rise and fall, but one thing is universally agreed upon by all: their brutality. In our quadrant alone, they crushed countless insurrections. With how well protected some of their ruins are to this day, I sometimes wonder what terrible force was strong enough to cause their destruction, Kaufman said as he closed up his tome. He paused for a moment before pulling out a flask from inside his waistcoat.
You should go check on Lieutenant Kelson. I'm sure you two need to verify some details concerning our landing.
Kaufman tucked his flask away. His eyes closed as he turned inward to reflect. Lorraine sometimes forgot that Kaufman not only possessed the knowledge of a seasoned archivist, but also the scars that came with it. I'll go check on him, Lorraine said, getting up from her seat. Before leaving, she placed a hand on Kaufman's shoulder. Once we get camp set up for the night, I'd like to hear your input on how we should proceed in dealing with the ruins, Head Archivist Tiller. Kaufman nodded. Of course, Captain Laroach. Kaufman reached into his bag for a different tome as Lorraine made her way to the front half of the shuttle. She passed through a small corridor and saw Kelson reviewing a list of all the equipment they had brought for the mission. Everything checking out, Lieutenant? Lorraine asked, peeking over Kelson's shoulder to get a glimpse at the list. Oh, I didn't see you there, Captain. Kelson turned his head slightly and looked down at Lorraine. So far, anyway. I was lucky to even get the list approved with the supply shortages we've been having lately. Does the station's quartermaster still have a thing for you? Lorraine nudged Kelson as her eyes lit up with curiosity and an impish smile formed on her face. If I say yes, will you stop bothering me about it? Probably not.
Then no.
Kelson looked through his list before stopping at an entry. Hey, Lorraine. Did you put in a request for 4 LAR rocket launchers? He looked over at her as she shuffled her feet and innocently whistled. Perhaps. Kelson slowly dragged the palm of his hand down the length of his forehead. Hey, you know how on our last mission we kept having to deal with Ralerin drones taking potshots at us? Well, I figured this time we could properly respond to them. With what little heavy ordnance we have to spare, I'm surprised these got approved.
Well, what can I say except the quartermaster has a thing for you? Doubt she would want her favorite lieutenant to get killed in the field by some pesky Ralerin drones.
Kelson huffed and went to the other side of the cargo bay, checking the inventory. Lorraine followed him over and noticed the seemingly out-of-place steamer chest. Another of head archivist Tiller's requested items he had brought along on the trip. She could only imagine how many tomes, charts, and other ancient texts he had managed to squeeze into it. If worse comes to worst, you think we have enough firepower to hold our own? Lorraine asked, examining the numerous boxes stored around them.
I would think so. You worried about us having to deal with the defense force, potentially?
Them, I think we can avoid. I'm just worried about whoever else is trying to get the intel and get to the ruins. If they're with the Ralerins, you know they'll have a lot of soldiers.
We've fought our fair share of Ralerins. They may have numbers on their side, but I'd say we have a few tricks of our own.
Kelson paused at another item on the list.
And thanks to you, even more munitions. Why do you always add on more equipment than we need? Kelson peered over at Lorraine.
Not my fault. My father taught me to always have more minitons than necessary to deal with your problems. Lorraine peeked back at the list. If it makes you feel any better, I've started cutting back. Lorraine looked down and felt her comm link buzzing. She clicked it on.
Captain Laroach, we are approaching the outskirts of Oldis,
one of the pilots said over Lorraine's comm link.
Still no hostile readings on the shuttle's sensors?
None whatsoever, Captain. Just another smooth entry. We've already secured landing clearance in one of the landing zones you mentioned recently. We should be landed in 10 minutes or so. Lorraine keyed off her comm link and turned back to Kelson.
Looks like we're about to find out if we'll need our extra firepower or not. The Galactic Tribune.
We now return to conclude our coverage. Who is the commander of the Historian Alliance? Little is known about the man who has ignited his own war against the behemoth Ralerin Empire. Conspiracy theories vary in scope on his past and motives. Some say that he's an exiled Ralerin noble and seeks revenge. Others say that he is an operative from one of the old northern powers, seeking to shake up the galactic order and make some openings. A few even believe that he isn't real and is instead a front for interests aligned against the Ralerins. So, what do we know? The exact world of his birth is unknown, but it is believed to be within the chaotic core of the southeastern quadrant. It is known that he spent many years on Brigantia and resided there when the Ralerin Expeditionary Force embarked to that region of space. No one has been able to conclusively place him within Ralerin space or on their homeworld during the blackout. Though the Ralerins steadfastly maintain his involvement, all information they have concerning the incident is classified. Only time will tell just what happened on that fateful day 5 years ago. The question on our mind is, who will bring an end to this war, and how the galactic balance of power will shift at its conclusion? Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Galactic Tribune, CH6. The shuttle glided through the airspace above Oldis. Lorraine could see the aged city from the front viewport of the shuttle. Looking ahead of her, the skies were filled with other shuttles and freighters, all ascending, descending, and otherwise moving above the busy city. She cleared her head before returning to the passenger cabin, where the others were assembled. All right, everyone. We land in Oldest soon, so listen up. The lights dimmed as Lorraine clicked on a small holographic display of the city. According to our intel, our informant is currently located near one of the main freighter loading zones. A red flashing blimp appeared on the display, showing the suspected area. Time is of the essence. Once we land, we'll be splitting up. Lieutenant Kelson and I will make contact with the informant and secure the intel. We suspect Ralerin or pro-Ralerin forces will descend on the Star Voyager site. While Kelson and I secure the intel, the rest of our group will establish a base camp near the ruins and begin surveying the area. If there is even the slightest chance of us being able to find any useful technology in the ruins, we need to secure it before the Ralerins can. We will be touching down soon. Good luck, everyone. Lorraine clicked off the holographic map, and the lights returned to their normal glow. While the men were readying up, Lorraine noticed that Kaufman was still in his seat, looking over his old text. Lorraine approached him and slowly slipped into the elderly scholar's world.
Head Archivist Tiller?
Lorraine coughed as Kaufman pulled himself away from the tome and back to the present.
Ah, Captain Laroach.
I understand that we will be touching down soon, Kaufman said as he closed up the old tome and tucked it away in his pack. He patted down the length of his jacket, seeming to run through a mental checklist as he muttered to himself. I can't guarantee how long we will be able to study the site, but...
Not to worry, Captain Laroach. While I may not have your fever for combat, I make up for that with an equal, and I dare say greater, fever for my work as an archivist. Kaufman slowly rose from his seat, grunting slightly as he adjusted the weight of his gear. If there is anything of value to find, we will find it and depart before the Ralerins, Colonel Akos, or anyone else even knows we were there.
Kaufman gave Lorraine a confident smirk before patting her shoulder. Despite his age and rigid manner of doing things, Kaufman didn't like losing out any more than Lorraine did. The pair's mutual trait likely enhanced any of their disagreements now that Lorraine thought about it. I'm more worried about the intel than I am the ruins.
Why is that?
I already know to expect traps or some hidden danger. It's pretty much in the territory for searching ruins of advanced civilizations. I don't know what to expect with getting the intel. I don't even know if there is any intel on Serpent. And this scav isn't just trying to get a quick payday out of us. Lorraine's face tightened slightly. Kaufman sighed. Lorraine could only wonder what he was about to berate her on this time. Lorraine, do you recall what I have told you before about the Salachan fox? Lorraine rubbed the back of her neck as she tried to recall. The last thing she expected today was a pop quiz on foreign wildlife.
I can't say that I remember,
Lorraine said, little to Kaufman's shock. The Salachan fox is quick-witted and fast. When he can't solve problems, he runs around until he can figure out a solution or the problem disappears. There's a reason I always referred to you as one during your archivist training, Kaufman said, before making his way over to check on the rest of his archivist team. Be the Salachan fox, quick-witted, and fast enough to avoid being bogged down in problems, Lorraine thought to herself. She had always wondered why he considered her to be a fox. Lorraine could feel a slight jolt as the shuttle touched down.
The shuttle has safely landed.
Crew is ready to depart on your go, Captain. One of the pilots buzzed in over Lorraine's comm piece. The pressurized seal on the ship's doors loosened, and the exit ramp slowly descended.
All right, everyone. You know what we are here for. The sooner we secure the intel and any data from the ruins, the sooner we can get back to taking the fight to the Ralerins.
The crew cheered with loud applause. As the applause died down, the men began to disembark from the shuttle with high morale. Lorraine and Kelson separated from the group as they approached Freighter Zone A. She looked back to see Kaufman and the rest of their team gathering their gear and preparing to depart. Kaufman caught her gaze and gave her a simple nod. Whatever info the informant had must be important for command to send such a quick response mission. If it was this vital, Lorraine could only hope that the Ralerins and their hidden allies didn't know about this intel or the depths of its value. The Selayan Courier. We continue our debate on whether starfighters should be manned or unmanned in today's edition of the Selayan Courier. We don't have to look far to know that war is an ugly and costly affair. The cost in materials, life, and the damage that it can cause is tremendous. With greater technological advancements being made every day, some have begun to advocate for starfighters to be controlled autonomously by AI. Those in favor of this approach cite the number of lives that can be saved as well as the cost that would be saved from not having to train human pilots. If a human ace is killed, then years of experience across multiple engagements are lost in an instant. If an AI starfighter is lost, merely upload its last build into a new starfighter and it's off to fight again. Critics of this new approach have emerged from several different sides. Within Salatius alone, many prominent members of the various flight houses view this as a move to strip the honor and valor from starfighter combat. Others within the scientific community warn that placing too much reliance on AI could weaken military readiness and create new targets within the defense apparatus. If a cyber attack were to damage the AI in control of the starfighters, it could at best render them ineffective or at worst turn them against the very hands that made them. A human must be bribed or coerced into turning on their home, but an AI can be hacked and reprogrammed in a fraction of the time. There are critics on both sides who cite the Ralerin war machine as both a positive and negative example of what a more autonomous military would look like. Though their cost in life is low, their material cost, logistical needs, and technical needs all run at a higher price. It is this reporter's humble opinion that if a day were to come when the last starfighter pilot would slide into his cockpit to soar into his final battle, then that pilot would be a Salatian. CH7. Kelson, I don't like the look of this place, Lorraine said, turning her gaze to the side slightly to see Kelson's own reaction. His expression was very open and showed the same degree of concern as did her own. Lorraine, I know it looks rough. No, not that. This place looks like it's one meager hit away from crumbling down, Lorraine replied as the pair looked over the building. Each glance offered a new, and often more concerning, flaw to the structure than the previous glance. If our informant is here, he's in more danger from this building than from any assassin. Lorraine sighed internally. Of all the places their informant could possibly pick to hide in, it had to be the condemned building awaiting its notice. Shall we? Kelson nudged Lorraine's shoulder, an amused grin spreading across his face. It took all of her willpower not to smack it off his smug face. Fine, but if this place comes down on our heads, know that I'm getting you back in the next life. Lorraine huffed as she started towards the door. After getting his fill of amusement, Kelson followed behind, and the pair entered the bar. Upon entering, the two were greeted with the pungent odor of alcohol, stale pretzels, and a hint of sweat, and tears to even out the fragrance. Lorraine's eyes scoured the bar, hopeful they might find their contact soon and be rid of this place. So far, she had only seen a few barflies and parties of what vaguely passed as sailors toasting their latest gains. A few lone drinkers stood out to Lorraine in her scan of the room. Grievers, drunkards, and potentially hired mercenaries were a quick way to complicate their mission. I think we have a good enough lay of the land. Time to ask the bartender if he's seen anyone matching our informant's description, Lorraine whispered to Kelson, who nodded. She made her way over to the bar as Kelson hung back a bit to keep a steady eye on the room. Lorraine slid onto a bar stool and waited for the bartender to finish pouring another patron a tall glass of booze. After filling the glass, he made his way over to Lorraine's stool. "What's your poison?" the bartender dryly asked as he fetched a fresh glass from underneath the bar counter and started to scrub its murky surface with his worn rag. "Not looking to quench my thirst, but maybe you can help quench my curiosity," Lorraine said, as the bartender slid the glass back underneath the counter. "You'd be better off with a drink. Information tends to be a top-shelf item, don't you know?" the bartender replied, crossing his arms with an unimpressed look. Lorraine could already tell that she wasn't his first or last customer wanting information. "I'm looking for a scavenger, supposed to live around here. Name, Dunn sound familiar at all?" Lorraine asked. "Can't say that I've heard of him. I suggest you buy a drink, else this conversation is done," the bartender snapped as he grit his teeth. "That's a shame, see? I found some money he wanted me to give to you. Said it was for a favor you did for him." Lorraine pulled out a small pouch and placed it on the bar counter. The soft metallic clinking of coins inside could be heard as the bulging pouch spread partly on the countertop. The bartender slowly reached a hand for the pouch before sliding it into a pocket of his dirty apron. "You know, now that I think about it, your friend got a room here the other day. If I recall correctly, he should still be there. Room 3, third door on the right. You can't miss it," the bartender replied with a wink before heading to another part of the counter to serve a new patron. Lorraine cocked her head towards Kelson and nodded for him to follow her as she made her way towards a flight of stairs that led up to the second level of the structure. Looking down at her feet, Lorraine could see that the stairs had certainly seen better days. She was almost shocked when her boot pressed down on a board that didn't squeak, ache, or otherwise moan in complaint. The pair finally made their way up to the bar's second floor. Ahead of them was a narrow hallway with faded and peeling wallpaper. Only a few of the light fixtures in the hallway even worked, and those that did lacked their decorative cover. Making their way down the hallway to the third door on the right, the duo stopped right outside the door. Lorraine slid a hand into her coat and could feel the smooth wooden grip of her blaster as Kelson kept a hand on his holster. Lorraine knocked at the door, the old wood softly echoing the beat from her knocks. No response. Lorraine knocked again, this time a bit louder. The vibrations made the door lightly shake at its weak hinges. Still no response. Lorraine huffed and pulled out her blaster, beating its butt against the door, leaving a few scrape marks near the impact. Finally, the pair heard a groan from inside the room, followed by the shuffling of footsteps along the floor. The pair exchanged glances before the door opened, and their gazes both turned to the figure standing before them. "Hey, you aren't my friends, and you don't have more drinks. What's the big idea?" the man asked, a bit miffed, as he balanced himself against the doorframe. "Jacob Dunn?" Kelson asked. The man matched the description in their brief, but he'd rather confirm that himself. I am he, yes," Jacob replied, unsure which of the pair to offer his hand to. He stumbled over himself a few times. His feet were loosely fixed to the ground, though the rest of his body slowly swung back and forth. "Is there something I can do for you? You both? There are two of you, right?" Jacob questioned, each question pushing him into further uncertainty. The man reeked of beer. His brown eyes were riddled with strained, bloodshot nerves. "Yes, actually there is. We're looking for a new bioscanner for our shuttle," Lorraine said slyly, slipping the sign included within their mission brief. Jacob stood there pondering for a moment. She could only hope that he still remembered the countersign, or even the intel for that matter.
Yeah, I've got some new bioscanners,
Jacob replied. Well, newish, he added as he wobbled his way back into his room. Lorraine and Kelson followed behind him, closing the door behind them and locking it.
What kind of scanner are you two looking for exactly? Looking to keep a pesky neighbor out? Government agents? Maybe Dash?
Lorraine sighed. She could tell that Jacob had one too many drinks, and she decided to speed things up. We're not here for a scanner, Lorraine interrupted. You're not?
No.
Jacob scratched underneath his chin with his thumb, thinking for a moment.
Then what are you here for?
Do you or do you not have information on Ralerin activities in this area? Lorraine asked, her irritation growing. Oh, you're those people. Jacob paused. Yeah, I got the information. I just don't have it with me right now.
Why not?
Kelson chimed in. Well, you see, Jacob was cut short as a loud thud hammered against the door. Hey, Jacob! We're back with more drinks. Sorry about the delay, now that we have a refill. Let's talk about the price of that information. The Nisoan Chronicle. Representatives in the League's assembly remain at an impasse on how to best address the increasing amount of foreign interest within their space. As the Ralerin Expeditionary Force, or REF, withdraws westward to shorten their overstretched supply lines, the conflict draws closer to Nisoan space, and many are starting to feel the pressure. While some Nisoan citizens have departed from their homes to join the Historians or aid the Ralerins, the presiding government has not declared support towards either side in this growing war. An increasing number of representatives have implored their colleagues to take a stance. Their only success has been in polarizing the assembly. A series of brief essays from various representatives on either side of the issue will be printed in the following publications to give the public a glimpse into this ongoing debate. Many in the broader galactic community watch curiously to see if the League shall be among the first powers to take a stand, or if they shall be the first casualty in this increasingly high-stakes conflict. CH8. I know the door wasn't locked when we left Jakob. Don't tell me you passed out in there. The doorknob was jostled, and several more thuds were laid against the door. Lorraine turned to Kelson and whispered, Quick, hide him under the bed. He won't fit, Kelson responded as Lorraine looked at the bed. Moving closer, she saw that Jakob's profile was too much to fit underneath.
Come on, buddy. I know you were looking forward to making some coin. I'll even buy another round once we settle everything.
The man on the other side bartered. Kelson could hear boots pacing back and forth. It seemed Jacob's prior guest wasn't alone. What do we do now? Lorraine looked around the room, scanning for any other spots that they could potentially hide Jacob. Under the desk? No way he'd be seen in an instant. In the bathroom? Every desperate victim's first choice of hiding spot. Finally, Lorraine found a prospect. Quick, shove him in the wardrobe! Lorraine's eyes glanced over at the poorly aged wooden wardrobe. Kelson guided the dazed Jacob towards it as Lorraine quickly opened its doors and pushed the towels inside to the side. The two grabbed Jacob, lifted him up to clear the bottom, and set him inside. Kelson quickly closed the doors before Jacob could fall out.
Wait, where are you two going?
Jacob asked, trying to open the door. And who turned the lights off? It isn't even evening yet? He managed to open it a hair and peeked his head out.
There are some friends of yours outside,
and we need to tell them that now isn't a good time, Lorraine said, looking around and grabbing an empty bottle to distract Jacob. Hey, it's empty. Why did you give me an empty bottle? Jacob lightly pouted as he tilted the bottle up, and saw only a few meager drops trickle out. It's a special bottle. If you stay really quiet and count to 300, it will fill up again. It's a magical artifact, you see, Lorraine said, as Jacob's eyes lit up brightly with wonder.
Jacob, if we can't settle this, I'm gonna have to call my boss. Trust me that she's the last person you want to tick off.
Lorraine closed the wardrobe door as the now appeased Jacob quietly counted to himself. She motioned for Kelson to occupy the bathroom before she went to the door. Come on, Jakob. Let's just... Lorraine opened the battered door before the man could continue.
Hey, can I help you?
Lorraine weakly asked as she held her stomach with one hand. From her personal experience, feigning any form of food poisoning was one of the quickest ways to get rid of someone.
Where'd Jacob go?
The man asked, looking down at Lorraine. Jacob! Who? The only people here are my friend Katie and me. Lorraine moved back into the room a bit. As she expected, the man at the door stepped inside, his eyes surveying the room.
Who's in the bathroom?
The man asked, noting the closed door and light shining from under the doorframe. I told you, my friend Katie. We're both really sick. You haven't eaten here, right? Lorraine asked. The man made his way towards the bathroom door before stopping as he heard Kelson wailing and loudly gagging.
Lorraine, is that you?
Kelson weakly asked from inside the bathroom. No, some people came here, looking for some guy named Jacob. I don't know any Jacob. I just know my stomach is trying to escape out of my mouth. Kelson made another hurling sound as the man turned back to Lorraine. The wardrobe door creaked open.
Lorraine,
You lied to me. This bottle did not fill back up, Jacob said, as he fell out of the wardrobe onto the floor. He glanced up at the man standing in the room before returning his gaze to Lorraine, who had a look of concern on her face.
did you order room service?
The man looked back over to Lorraine, narrowing his eyes as he stepped closer to her. Now, Kelson! Lorraine shouted as the bathroom door swung open. Kelson fired off 2 rounds at the man, hitting him center mass in the chest. The other man outside rushed into the room, drawing his own blaster from his holster. Lorraine ducked to the ground and grabbed the empty bottle near Jacob. She flung it up at the man, distracting him and allowing Kelson to fire off a few shots. The bottle fell to the ground and shattered, the man falling to his side. Why did you break my magic bottle? Jacob whined, staggering up to his feet. You said it didn't work, Lorraine said, looking back over at the fallen men with a slight look of scorn. I was trying to trick it into working. Jacob almost fell backwards, but was caught by Kelson. Why did you kill those men, Katie? They were my friends, Jacob cried and slobbered. I wish I knew their names. Relax, Jacob. These are just stun charges. They'll be fine in a few hours, but a little sore. Kelson reassured Jacob and helped him sit on the side of the bed. He directed his gaze back to Lorraine and squinted. Katie, really? Lorraine suppressed a chuckle. She prepared to respond, but felt a buzzing at her waist. She grabbed her communicator and read the ID. I'm getting an incoming call from Kaufman. Can you help Jacob sober up some? Lorraine asked, as Kelson helped keep Jacob from falling back on the floor.
I'll see what I can do. It's best not to keep him waiting, you know,
Kelson teased before helping Jacob into the bathroom. Lorraine closed the door to the hallway and sat on the edge of the bed. She clicked her communicator on. Go ahead, Kaufman, she said, lying back and breathing out a sigh of relief.
The Nissoan Chronicle.
In today's edition, we have a letter from Representative Fabien, who supports a receptive stance towards the Ralerins.
My fellow Nisawans, I abhor violence. The means by which members, and perhaps even the elusive leader himself, of the historians elected to respond to the Ralerins' growing galactic influence is nothing short of a brazen affront to civil discourse. If ever any of us should disagree in policy with one of the other great powers in this quadrant, one of the northern powers, or even those that border us to the west, would we be justified in striking them? Not with our words, protest, or even an appeal to change course, but with violence? Number. Then why is it that a group who has struck at the very heart of the Ralerin Empire claims to be defending themselves against the Ralerins' response? To label the Ref as an invasive force is ludicrous. If any in the galactic community viewed this endeavor as an invasion, why would they have approved the requested response? As this conflict draws closer to our own borders, I put my faith in my fellow members of the Assembly to continue allowing for the Ref to safely send supplies through our space to their forces. If defeat, or preferably a diplomatic solution, should be reached, then the Ralerins could rest easy knowing that we would grant them safe passage through our space and block any effort to antagonize them on their way home. The choice is simple. We only need to make it. CH9. I'm glad that you finally decided to pick up Captain Laroach. Lorraine could feel the old archivist rolling his eyes from afar. Sorry about that. Kelson and I were occupied with some unexpected visitors, but we found the informant. The normalcy of events like this happening on missions was of greater concern to Lorraine at this point than the events themselves. How are things faring on your end?
Ah, I see,
Kaufman said. He didn't bother asking why they were occupied for so long. As far as he was concerned, her casually answering was a sign that they were all right. I am happy to report that we have successfully established the camp. Our topographical maps were spot on, and we've managed to pitch camp on a nearby plateau that overlooks the ruins of the Citadel, Kaufman said, taking little effort to spare Lorraine his pride in his job well done. The rest of the men are unpacking the equipment, but some of my archivists have managed to make initial observations of the ruins.
Did they find anything promising?
Lorraine asked, looking over to see Jacob stagger out from the bathroom. He held his head as Kelson followed behind, ready to catch him should he lose his balance. It was good to see that he was starting to come to. The structure is in surprisingly good shape. Our initial observations reveal several potential entry points through various breaches in the perimeter walls. Once we assemble some of our more sensitive equipment, we should be able to determine if there are any functioning defensive measures and plot a safe path inside. How are things with the informant? Kaufman asked, as Lorraine managed to pull her attention back from her current spectacle. Seeing Jacob stare at the shattered bottle in a confused effort to recall its value was a little amusing.
Well, the good news is that we managed to find him. The bad news is that he doesn't have the information on him,
Lorraine said, watching as Kelson helped Jacob into a chair and handed him a glass of water. With how quickly Jacob gulped it down, she could see how he ended up so intoxicated earlier. I see. And the guests that had you occupied earlier. Do they factor into your news at all? Kaufman asked, dreading the answer that was to come. It seems we aren't the only ones after Jacob's intel. A couple of goons had been trying to get him to hand it over. Don't worry, though. We managed to take care of them, Lorraine said, as she prepared herself for Kaufman's inevitable response.
Don't worry? Lorraine, when has that response ever made anyone worry less?
I'm sure it's happened sometime. Maybe your next big research project could be documenting known cases. Never mind that. Kaufman huffed and exhaled before calming himself and continuing. Do you and Kelson need any help securing the intel?
We've got it covered. We're waiting for the informant to sober up a bit more, and then we're going to where he stashed it. Captain Laroach, if you've already encountered trouble, chances are more will be coming. I can send some of the Marines to help. You're right, which is exactly why we can't afford to wait for help to arrive. You continue to work on your end, and we'll take care of things on ours. With any luck, we'll be at the camp before nightfall. Captain, I advise you to... Goodbye, Archivist Tiller.
That's head.
Lorraine clicked off her communicator and ensured it was set to silent before turning to Kelson.
I'm guessing that didn't go very well?
Kelson asked, already able to read the conversation from Lorraine's expressions during the call. Kaufman's louder responses were also a dead giveaway.
Not particularly, no. Kaufman has managed to set up the camp. All we have to do now is get the intel and regroup with them there.
Sounds simple enough. Doesn't it always?
You've got me there, Captain.
Kelson turned to Jacob, who was still seated in the chair.
What about him?
He's sober enough. These are hardly ideal circumstances, but that's what we're used to, Lorraine said, before walking over to the chair and patting Jacob's shoulder. Say, you're the woman who wanted to buy the scanner. He paused, an idea sluggishly surfacing in his brain. No, you're the ones here for the intel, right? Jacob asked, blinking a few times.
That's right, Jacob.
Lorraine gave his shoulder a confirming pat.
We've got to head out now, and you need to come with us,
Lorraine said, as Kelson helped to pull him up to his feet.
Any reason I should go with you and not take a long nap?
Jacob yawned, his eyes looking back at the bed longingly. You see those guys over there? Lorraine asked, pointing to the unconscious bodies of the men who came to the door earlier. Yes. What about them?
More will come if you stay here. You can hardly defend yourself.
That's not true. I could take any of those guys over there. Jakob attempted to throw up his hands in a pugilistic fighting stance. His lingering lack of balance made him a greater threat to himself than to anyone else.
They're unconscious, so I imagine you could. Though I doubt you could handle the conscious ones who would come next.
Jacob struggled to bring a hand to his chin as he pondered his current options. All right, I'll go with you two. Jacob patted himself down, ensuring he wasn't leaving anything behind.
Only because I forgot to feed my livestock earlier.
Of course, animals have to eat too, Lorraine said, letting Kelson lead Jacob out of the room. Lorraine prepared to follow the two out when she heard something. Looking over to the two unconscious men, Lorraine could hear a faint beeping. She moved closer and bent down, searching for a moment until she found a communicator. Picking it up, she noticed the familiar symbol of the Nisoan Defense Force on its back. Did Colonel Akos know of their mission? It wasn't a stretch to believe that she could have had them followed, but the men had been at the bar before she and Kelson arrived. Did someone else give her the information? Lorraine thought a bit more on how it all pieced together. She had no proof, but she was starting to suspect that Colonel Akos or others in the local defense force might be collaborating with the Ralerins. The Nisoan Chronicle. In today's edition, we present a letter from Representative Alair, who favors strengthening ties with the historians. There comes a time when a people are obliged to take a stand and surrender the safety of neutrality. No one here disagrees that the Ralerin Empire is a sovereign power and is afforded its due rights. What I, and many others, disagree with, however, is the extent to which they have gone beyond their rights. If the Ralerins wish to pursue those responsible for the attack on their capital, I know few who would disagree. However, why should they extend their justice to the other worlds of the southeastern quadrant? Is the sovereignty of the Luxkins, Brummels, and Cerularians lesser than that of the Ralerins? If any among you are still undecided on who we ought to support, then I ask you this. In the wake of the many battles that have engulfed this corner of the galaxy, who has helped to rebuild and uplift those displaced by the horrors of war? The Ralerins indeed spoil those who aid and champion their cause, but the historians pursue the work of rebuilding without bias. Though their work often concerns unearthing the past, they have shown themselves more than able to build the future. CH-10.
How many do you see?
I count at least 4 men, most likely more inside captain. Kelson paused as he peered through his binoculars.
Think they figured out the team at the bar failed?
Let's find out, Lorraine said, as she inserted the comm chip she had taken from one of the men's communicators back at the bar. She adjusted her own to its frequency and waited for something to come over the channel.
Team 3. Colonel Akos wants an update.
What's your status?
This is Team 3. We are still searching through the property. So far, we haven't been able to find the target.
Continue your search. We haven't received a new report from Team 1 yet. Negotiations might be stalling, or they're slacking off. Damn rookies! Team 2 is still on overwatch at the starport. Lorraine breathed a sigh of relief. They were still unaware that the team at the bar had been dealt with. She was concerned about the prospect that Colonel Akos had a group guarding their ship. Having to fight their way into the city and onto their ship to escape for such a simple mission wouldn't earn them any commendations. Not to mention, it wouldn't go over very well with Admiral Goslan or the rest of command.
How do you want to do this?
Kelson asked, as the two looked down at the property from atop a nearby hill. From what they had observed, Jakob's old homestead consisted of 3 buildings: an old farmhouse on the far east side of the property, a workshop on the south end, and a barn nestled into the southwestern corner of the property. Within the fenced-in perimeter of the property were various piles of junk, most likely taken in by Jakob as salvage to sell or fix up. Well, first, figuring out where exactly the intel is hidden might be a good idea. Lorraine looked behind herself and Kelson to see Jakob fast asleep. They had hardly been here for 5 minutes before he decided to doze off. But seeing as Jacob is asleep, we may as well go ahead and secure this place, Lorraine said, as she reached over to her pack and pulled out a long metal case. She opened it up and began to assemble a long-barrel blaster rifle. Kelson, Lorraine said, as she continued to piece together her rifle. I want you to make your way through the property. I'll provide overwatch from here and direct you as needed. Remember, non-lethal blows if you can manage it. Colonel Akos might be corrupt, but we don't know for certain if all of the defense force is as well. Kelson nodded and made his way down from the hill and crept up to the front gate of the homestead. He peered through the planks and radioed over to Lorraine.
I see a single guard lingering near some junk piles on the north wall. Think you can take him out?
Kelson asked over their comms as Lorraine rested the barrel of her rifle on the ground and peered through the scope. Taking the shot standby, Lorraine said as she lined up the guard in her crosshairs. She slowly exhaled and fired. She watched through her scope and saw the man drop to the ground. He's down. You're clear to enter, Lorraine said as she watched Kelson slip past the gate. Once inside, Kelson made his way over to the body of the guard and dragged it behind one of the piles of junk. He crept behind a junk pile and peered over the top of it.
All right, Kelson. There's one by the entrance to the barn and 2 near the workshop. Give me a moment and I can verify the rest, Lorraine said as she reached down and turned on her thermal optics. One inside of the main house. Beyond that, just the 3 outside.
All right, I'll take the one by the barn and wait for your go on the workshop, Kelson said as he sneaked forward. He crept along the wall of the barn before slowly moving forward. Peering around the corner, he picked up a small piece of scrap from a nearby pile and tossed it in through the nearby barn door. The piece hit with a soft thud, loud enough to catch the attention of the nearby guard who went inside to investigate. Lorraine watched through her thermal scope as she saw the guard near the barn disappear inside before Kelson slipped in behind him and proceeded to knock him out.
Kelson, I've got eyes on the 2 near the workshop. We'll need to drop them quickly. I'll take the one on the far side, and you rush the closer one,
Lorraine said as she saw Kelson slide back outside the barn and take up position on the side wall of the workshop.
On you!
Kelson said, gripping his blaster pistol firmly.
Go!
Lorraine said, taking the shot. The far guard slumped to the ground. The one closer to Kelson looked to the side in shock, but was quickly taken down by Kelson before he could respond.
All right, we just have the one left in the house. Move into position near the entrance. I want a few answers from this one before he takes a nap,
Lorraine said as she lifted her rifle and flung it over her shoulder. Lorraine sighed as she saw the still slumbering Jacob curled up on the ground, softly snoring. Wake up, Lorraine said, lightly kicking her boot against his foot.
No, I don't wanna,
Jacob groggily replied as he rolled on his side, turning away from Lorraine. I wasn't asking you to wake up. I'm telling you to, Lorraine replied, lightly stomping on Jacob's boot. He sprawled out and loudly yawned.
Okay, I'm up,
Jacob replied, slowly rising to his feet. He was given little time to find his balance as Lorraine grabbed him by the wrist and dragged him along with her to meet up with Kelson. Once on the property, they made their way over to Kelson, who was kneeling behind a pile of junk near the house.
I see you finally managed to get our friend up,
Kelson chuckled before Lorraine punched him on the arm.
You know, thanks to you,
Lorraine snarked. Seen any further movement inside? None so far. Do you think the guy inside is just looking for any potential leads? Kelson asked, as the group looked through the illuminated window of the house. They could see the figure of a man hunched over a table, sifting through documents.
All right, here's the plan.
Kelson, I want you to. Lorraine was staunchly interrupted as Jacob suddenly stood up and began to shout. Hey, jerk, get out of my house! Didn't anyone teach you any manners? Jacob's words slurred out, along with some saliva, as the man inside turned and made his way to the front of the house. He walked through the door and spotted Jacob. Stop right there! Throw up your hands and... Before the man could continue, Kelson landed a shot on his knee, causing him to fall back onto the porch. He tried to get up, only to receive another shot to the shoulder.
Keep trying if you want. I've got more rounds to spare,
Kelson said, keeping his blaster trained on the man.
Great work, Katie. That's what I was just about to do,
Jacob said, looking over at Kelson.
It's Kelson,
he duly replied. The pair looked over at Jacob, who had already begun to make his way over to his house.
Thanks for getting me home, guys. I'll leave a tip on the counter.
Jacob sluggishly walked up the steps to his house and went inside. Lorraine moved closer to the last man, who was still conscious, and leaned closer to him.
You both are in big trouble, interrupting an official investigation, assaulting officers.
Lorraine slapped the man to stop his useless listing of criminal offenses.
Official investigation, huh? The two men we encountered at the bar didn't seem too official to us. Did they Kelson? Lorraine asked, as Kelson walked closer, his blaster still aimed at the man. They didn't seem too keen on talking to us. I checked their blasters before we left them to nap. Not a single stun round to be found. Kelson responded, "The man you are helping is a dangerous criminal. He stole property from a Defense Force ship and even—" The man was promptly cut off as Jacob returned from his house and hit the man over the head with a wooden board. "I found one of my favorite vases smashed. It must have been this guy. He was the only one in the house." Jacob kicked the man's side, making him roll down the few steps in front of the house and down to the ground. "If he can guess that, he must be getting closer to sobering up," Kelson commented. Lorraine gave him a nudge. "Kelson, give Jacob a hand, will you? I'm gonna try and see if I can find the intel we are looking for," Lorraine said, as Kelson made his way over to the house and proceeded inside with Jacob. Lorraine detached her scope from her rifle and peered through it, adjusting the thermal settings as she scanned the property. So far, she hadn't seen any promising signs in the house or the workshop. She started to scan over the barn when she noticed something. Below the floor of the barn was a lower-than-average thermal signature. Making her way inside, Lorraine peered around the barn before searching with her scope again. She made her way closer to the unusual thermal signature before stopping. "Is that what I think it is?" Before Lorraine could further process the situation, Jacob wobbled into the barn and past her. "I almost forgot where I left my tip. Can you believe it?" Jacob said, as he reached past the dirty floor and searched for a moment with his glove-covered hands. Finally, he found the latch he was looking for and pulled up. Lorraine watched as the top of a hidden trapdoor lifted up, and Jacob peered down inside. "Yep, it's still here, thankfully." Jacob pulled up a large metal sphere attached to some broken plating before setting it down on the nearby barn floor. Lorraine looked over the device carefully. It had the correct, dense metallic casing. The broken plating near it appeared to be made of the proper steel. It even had the serial numbers from the factory that made it. Kelson arrived a few moments later, slow on Jacob's heels after searching the house for him. He prepared to speak, but paused when he saw what the pair had been looking at. "Do you have it?" Lorraine asked, and Kelson nodded, reaching into his backpack to pull out a small, oval-shaped device. Kaufman had been reluctant to let her borrow one of his toys, but he conceded after it was deemed essential to the mission. Kelson, agreeing to carry it, did ease his resistance somewhat. He powered up the device and aimed its lens at the serial number. It hummed after processing the image and began to search for the numbers. The three stood there, silently waiting for the results to come through. After a few minutes, the device dinged as its findings appeared on the screen. "What's the verdict?" Lorraine asked. She clenched her fist by her side and looked over to Kelson. He checked and double-checked the readings before his eyes glanced up to Lorraine's, and he responded. "We found a positive match on its model and ship of origin. And it's a match for an RFI model surveillance drone." He stepped closer and showed Lorraine the exact readout. She studied the results, her eyes widening as she read the whole line. "We found the trail. It's from Serpent." "The Ralerin broadcast conglomeration." "Is the Historian menace closer than you think?" This story and more will be covered tonight. Good evening, citizens and subjects of the Ralerin Empire. Praise be to His Imperial Majesty and the ruling council. Since the devastating terrorist attack 5 years ago, many have asked the question,
Are we truly safe? Though there has never been an invasion into the depths of Ralerin space, many feel a lingering fear, and they may be right. Earlier this week, a joint Ralerian Field Intelligence and Knights of Ralerius task force, comprising RFI and KOR, respectively, apprehended foreign operatives believed to have ties to the Historian Alliance. Although no charges have been formally announced, an investigation is still ongoing to determine their purpose. It is unclear if any members of this group managed to evade capture. Citizens and subjects are advised not to approach anyone they suspect may be suspicious and instead contact the proper authorities. The RFI and other agencies are still hard at work to locate and apprehend potential terror cells before they can undermine the greater goals of our empire, or worse, threaten the welfare and safety of our people. Remain vigilant, and remember that only together can we prevent calamity and ensure His Majesty's vision for the future.